Hey, what's up guys, it's Mike from Alpha Reptiles, and today we're here with Joe. Hey. He is one of the employees here at the Phoenix Herpetological Society, which I'll turn it over to you and you can do a little bit of explanation of where we're standing and what this organization is all about.
This is the Phoenix Herpetological Society. We are the largest reptile sanctuary in the U.S. and we started out about 17 years ago. Our founders, three friends who just had a passion for reptiles, they realized that there were dog shelters, cat shelters, even bird shelters, and there wasn't really any place for people to turn in their unwanted reptiles or reptiles that they just couldn't care for anymore. And so they originally set out to make what would just be an iguana shelter. There's huge craze for a while in the pet industry. Everybody and their brother had green iguanas. And around the early 2000s when everybody was looking for new homes for them, wanted to get rid of them, that's when PHS was founded. Just to be an iguana shelter, but over the years we started taking in more and more species of lizard, a few snakes here and there. We registered with Arizona Game and Fish, let them know that we were going to be a rescue. And one day we got a call from them. Our founders had reptile experience, had a crocodilian experience, so they called us and said, oh, we just found somebody has an illegal pet alligator. Actually, a couple of illegal pet alligators. Can you give them a home? If not, we're going to have to euthanize them. Our founders, the property that PHS is on today actually is the childhood home of our executive curator. Like, well, we have all this land. We can put down the footing for a couple ponds, and yeah, let's do it. Let's save these alligators. And that was really when PHS, the Phoenix Herpetological Society, really just took off, and it all snowballed from there. Started getting more crocodiles, some from other zoos, some from other situations where people had them illegally. And then over time, eventually got a call saying someone was found with an illegal venomous snake, and that started the venom side of things. And brings us to where we are today with over 1,700 animals that we currently care for. Second largest crocodilian collection in the U.S. We've got 21 out of 23 species in the world, and the largest venomous snake collection in the Southwest. And today we serve still as a place for people to turn in unwanted pets, law enforcement to turn in illegal pets, and we also have a very active endangered breeding program for some of our venomous snakes as well as crocodilians that call PHS home.
Awesome. And so you guys, website is phoenixherp.com, correct?
Yep, the website is phoenixherp.com.
You guys accept donations, you can actually sponsor animals from what I understand. And Charlie here, was he one of the originals?
Charlie and his girlfriend over in the pond behind us, Lucy, were two of the first alligators that came here, and we're actually the first alligators from that Game and Fish call saying, can you take alligators? And this is where it all started with Charlie and Lucy here.
Incredible. So the first video we're going to go into is actually an Arizona native species. We covered things like a Gila monster, there was a milk snake, a rattlesnake, a western diamondback.
Rattlesnake.
So make sure you guys stay tuned, and why don't we get into the video?
Frederick is a Gila monster. He's an Arizona native, and he is a very large Gila monster at that. These guys usually don't get quite this large. He's about an inch off of the state record, but their big claim to fame is being one of only two venomous species of lizard in the world. Gila monsters are a very reclusive species. They spend a lot of their lifetime underground. Really the only time you see one is right after monsoons. They'll come up to get water, come up to find resources during that time. So if you ever cross paths with one, you can consider yourself very lucky. I've lived here my whole life and I've only seen one in the wild one time. As far as their venom goes though, it's a non-lethal venom. Nobody's ever died from the venom of a Gila monster bite. What has happened is sometimes people will get bitten, they'll go into shock while they're trying to drive themselves somewhere, and that's when more serious injuries can come from Gila monster bites. But generally their venom is just designed to cause pain, and that's why you see these bright colors on Gila monsters. That's to remind an animal, if they have crossed paths, like a coyote that might have seen one slowly moving across the desert and thought it was an easy meal, he's going to whip around very quickly. They don't walk fast, but they can turn around really fast if something tries to pick them up, and that's when they'll bite and latch on. Gila monsters don't have the specialized fangs that rattlesnakes have for injecting venom. They've got solid fixed fangs that are aggressively recurved so they can bite and hold on, and they have to do that because without the hollow fangs for injecting the venom, they just have to let that venom seep in with their saliva and then slowly seep into the wound. But anyway, if a the coyote were to bite one or try to get an easy meal and he was bitten by this, that coyote would have about 2 to 3 weeks of just intense burning pain at the site of the bite. And the idea behind these bright colors is he's going to see those colors in the future and realize that this is not an easy meal, this is not something he should approach, and will hopefully leave him alone in the future. Something else that makes their conservation a little difficult, Gila monsters have a very small home range. They spend most of their life within about a quarter of a mile of where they're born, and they learn where to find food in those areas, where to find water in those areas. And when you take them out of that area that they know, it really messes with their whole system. If you were to relocate them to some other part of desert, even if it's a similar elevation, similar climate, they're not going to know where to find their food. They don't readjust well, and that goes for even captivity. When people illegally take them from the wild to have as what they think is going to be a cool pet, usually it takes months of force feeding because it just messes with their whole system. So this is one of those creatures that's absolutely outstanding, but you have to only appreciate it out in the wild or in zoos and facilities that are caring for ones that have unfortunately already been taken from the wild. Their diet largely consists of eggs from species that nest on the ground like quail. They'll also eat rat pups from kangaroo mice, pack rats, anything that they can find down in burrows. Gila monsters aren't really fast animals, so they're not going to run down their prey, so they go for things that are small and can't really get away, like eggs and baby rats. The fascinating thing about that is, in a way, Gila monsters can actually count. Because they live in such small home ranges, they like to return to the same sources of food year after year, so the same rodent dens, the same bird nests, and they've learned through years and years and years of adaptation and evolution that if they go to eat all the eggs that a bird might have left in a nest, that bird's gonna go, oh my god, all my eggs are gone, and they're not gonna nest there next year, and he's gonna lose that food source. So if they come across a bird's nest and there's 10 eggs in it, they'll only eat 5. If there's 8 eggs in it, they'll only eat 4. If there's an odd number, they'll eat somewhere around half the eggs. That way the bird won't really notice and will hopefully nest there again the next year. Where if you send them down into scientists have done this in controlled settings, a den that has a bunch of rat pups in it, they'll go down and they'll eat every last one because the mammals don't care. They'll just keep having babies year after year and he'll have that continued food source. And that's just one of the coolest things I think about them. It just shows how intelligent they are. And like a lot of desert creatures, food and water is scarce out here. He might get water only a handful of times a year, and for food he might go months and months without eating. So he can take down very large prey. If he were to find something in a hole that couldn't run away from him, he's capable of eating things as wide as his head. While we're on the topic of that, something that is often said, if you're bitten by a Gila monster, all you have to do is, again, people only ever get bitten on their hands. You have to jam their hand further in it to get them to release. It won't work, especially if it's just a finger, because he's capable of swallowing something wider than his head. So your finger, no matter how big your hands are, isn't going to be any of a challenge for him. You're just giving him more to chew on.
Why don't we make like this Russian tortoise and move away from the Gila monster and towards a snake found in Arizona? Let's go meet him.
So this guy's Arizona mountain king snake. This is one of those snakes that you hear the rhyme about, red on black, friend of Jack, which if you look here on his scales, the red stripes are right next to the black stripes. So the red on black, friend of Jack, or red on black, Venom black, indicates that this is a safe snake to hold. Now, it only works in North America. Don't take that tip into South America. The other side of that is the red on yellow, deadly fellow. So if those red stripes were making contact with the yellow, then that would indicate that he's a coral snake. That's really not needed here in Arizona because our coral snakes that we do have are so much smaller than the king snakes we have. Unless it's a baby Arizona mountain king, you can just look at the size and know that's not a coral snake. This is already much bigger than any coral snake in Arizona would get. Our coral snakes usually at an absolute max will top out around 18 inches. Any bigger than that, consider yourself lucky for seeing one of the monster coral snakes out there. But this is a montane species. They typically occur at higher elevations. People will sometimes tell us that they were out mountain biking and they saw a 2 or 3 foot coral snake, and whenever we hear that, we know that it's going to be one of these Arizona mountain kings, which are just an absolutely amazing species. An awesome little Arizona native. And that little yellow patch up on his nose there is another indicator that he's not a coral snake. The Arizona coral snakes will always have a black nose. This guy's another one of those iconic Arizona species. This is a horny toad, as a lot of people out here call them, or horned lizards. And one of their claims to fame, besides having all these spikes that are designed to make them look like an unappealing prey item, and hopefully will keep most predators at bay. If those fail, he has a secondary defense of being able to actually shoot or at least seep blood out of his eyes to freak out and scare away predators and hopefully make them think that this isn't going to be a suitable prey item. He's just another one of those very cool Arizona natives, and there is a lot of diversity in their coloration. If you find them up near Payson where there's a lot of clay and red rock, they'll have a really beautiful red color to them, and they usually, wherever you find them, they're going to match their surroundings really, really well. And if they were just sitting still, you're going to be hard-pressed to see one in the wild until they actually start moving, and you can pick up on that motion a lot easier than any of their actual color or shape or size. These guys feed largely on ants and termites. Makes them very hard to keep in captivity. The only reason we have this one is someone had him illegally, so he came to live here. And what we have to do is from time to time we'll go out and catch ants for them. Most time we won't go for them. They're picky eaters, and they actually can differentiate ants from their home range and different ants from, say, just the backyard here. So he won't always go for them here. What we do in that case, there's
the formic acid.
Yeah, product by Reptiles, the formic acid supplement, which kind of helps make the crickets a little bit more like the diet that he should be having. This is a Chuckwalla. This is another Arizona native, and their big claim to fame is being the balloon of the animal kingdom. What they do when they're threatened is they'll go running for rock crevices, and he's got all this loose skin here. You can see I can actually even pull up little pieces of it, not tightly or anything, but you can see all this loose skin. And what he'll do is run down into crevices between rocks and inflate himself like a balloon. That way any birds or large predators that might be pursuing him, they're going to try to pull on him to get him out. Works by making himself bigger once he's in the hole than he was when he went in, so he can't get pulled back out. We normally come into contact with them here at the Phoenix Herpetological Society is we get calls from people who are convinced they have a Gila monster in their backyard and they're worried about their dogs being bitten. And a lot of people, like we've talked about, don't really see Gila monsters. I've lived here 21 years before I finally saw one in the wild. So they see a big black lizard with a little bit of orange on it. It fits their description of how they've heard Gila monsters look. 9 out of 10 times we're responding to a Gila monster call. It turns out to be just one of these little guys. And they're adorable non-venomous species. They are capable of giving a pretty painful bite if you catch one off guard, but generally speaking, they're fairly docile. And probably my favorite thing about them is during the right times of year, you can actually see them up in some of the lower Palo Verde trees eating the little yellow flower blooms, because they are an herbivorous species. So they eat leaves, the little flowers that drop from the trees, and you can find them all over Piastawa Peak down here, Camelback Mountain. There's a protected subspecies that lives over on South Mountain, which this one you can't really see is part of. They've got what's called the carrot tail, the bright orange coloration down here. And they're protected because they're really sought after in the pet trade. And what was happening was poachers were going out collecting them from the wild. On top of taking those animals out of the wild, when they go to catch them, they run into these rock crevices, they puff themselves up, and these poachers have to pry apart these natural habitats. So it was kind of a twofold attack on the population in the wild. They were destroying the habitat that the ones that are left there need to survive, and they're taking individuals from the wild. You always want to have captive bred animals because anything else is hurting the wild population.
And so these guys are primarily herbivorous, aren't they? Yep.
Yeah, you won't see them eating rat pups or anything like that. Here they have a diet very similar to the bearded dragons that we have, minus the insects.
As my time at the PHS came to a close, I knew it wouldn't be an accurate representation of the reptiles of Arizona without some rattlesnakes. So why don't we pass these tortoises and head on to the Venom room? There's currently over 30 recognized species of rattlesnakes worldwide. Remarkably, Arizona is home to 13 of those species, and if I remember correctly, 11 of those 13 species call Phoenix Herpetological Society home. Rattlesnakes are a flagship species of the American Southwest, and specifically Arizona. Now, with that being established, why don't we move on to talking about some of the individual rattlesnake species that are found in the Venom room. First off, we're going to start off with the prairie rattlesnake. The prairie rattlesnake is a widespread species reaching across northern Mexico all the way into southern Canada and pretty much everywhere in between. A large specimen in Arizona will only reach about 2.5 to 3 feet due to limiting environmental factors like low food and very warm temperatures. Besides their size, they pack a potent cocktail of venom, which is made up from both neurotoxic and hemotoxic components. Another incredible species of rattlesnake is the black-tailed rattlesnake, which is found across Texas, New Mexico, and into northern and western Arizona. They're another good-sized rattlesnake reaching about 4 feet in length, and as you can see, they are gorgeous with a high degree of contrast between the brown undertone of the scales to the black diamond patterns on their back, which are outlined by white. This color pattern allows for incredible camouflage in the rocky and mountainous regions they are found. Moving on to one of my favorite species of rattlesnakes, the speckled rattlesnake. As you can see, this rattlesnake is drop dead gorgeous. They're known for their wide range of variation from location to location, this one being the more salt and pepper look. However, they can be fed with dark tones of red and much lighter beige colors. The size of an average speck is around 4 feet long and slightly less in Arizona due to the limiting environmental factors. But their size and color are both dependent on where they're found. In Arizona, they are largely found in mountain and hilly regions, so you're not going to run into them too often in the Sonoran desert tightscapes. And moving on to the last species highlight, the Mojave rattlesnake. To an untrained eye, these are very commonly mistaken for diamondback rattlesnakes, mostly due to the brown saddles down the length of their dorsal midline. Unfortunately, the Mojave rattlesnake has the most potent venom of any rattlesnake in North America, and it's remarkably hard to treat a human bite as they have two totally different kinds of venom. One type is mostly neurotoxic and the other is highly hemotoxic. That makes it important to remember that rattlesnakes use venom as a last defense. They would much rather not use their energetically expensive venom on an incompetent human that is too obnoxious to respect their auditory warning, that being their rattle. And with that being said, there's one more special treat for everyone, so let's go check it out.
So this is a western diamondback rattlesnake, probably one of the most iconic Arizona reptiles, and he's in that iconic rattlesnake pose right now, head up, ready to strike, and the rattle, unfortunately kind of blocked by his body right now, warning you not to get any closer. And that's really the coolest thing about rattlesnakes, is they have the rattle as their primary defense. They want you to know that they're there and want you to just stay away. Their venom is designed for food procurement. It's not like a Gila monster where it's supposed to keep predators away. Their venom is designed just to get them food. And being a hemotoxic venom, it works twofold. Not only is it able to kill the prey, but because hemotoxic venom attacks the blood cells and melts tissue, it's almost like a pre-digestion for the rattlesnake. So rattlesnakes and a lot of viper species will strike their prey and instantly let it go and let it run away. Then in the next 5-10 minutes, that prey item's going to die and they're going to go sniff it out and track it down. And all the while they're finding where that rat scurried off to before it died, that venom is working through its system, melting tissue and working as a pre-digestion. And then even after it's been consumed by the rattlesnake, of course swallowed whole like any snake would, it's still digesting it in a way from the inside out. So it's being digested by the snake and still from the inside by the venom. They're not necessarily a really sight-oriented animal as much as a heat-oriented animal. And he's not going to be able to pick up on as much of my heat as he would. If I was inside doing this with my hand, he would be following it and not missing a beat. And that's because right under his nostrils there, you have two specialized heat pits. He's a species of, oh, I'm sorry, buddy. He's a species of pit viper, which means that he uses those to sense the heat from prey, potential predators, and uses that to aid him in finding food. But back to that rattle, now that we can see it, that's their primary defense. Their venom isn't a defense because they rely on it so much to get their food. They don't want to waste it on a person because out here again in the desert, food is scarce, water's scarce, and he might only have a few opportunities a year to eat. And if one of those opportunities passes by right after he had to bite a person or a coyote or anything like that, he might be out a meal. Some rattlesnakes here in Phoenix area, Arizona, they might only eat 3 or 4 times a year. So missing one meal, think about it that way, it could be missing 25% of his food for the year, and he might not make it through the winter because he had to use his venom defensively, and that's just not what it's designed to do. This is actually larger than you would see one in the wild in Arizona. There just isn't enough resources for them to get this large here. They are Arizona's technically largest species rattlesnake. Western Diamondbacks can reach lengths of about 6 feet long. But definitely going over into Texas where there's more food, more rainfall, you definitely end up with larger rattlesnakes.
Right on. Thank you very much, Joe. It's been an awesome time here at Phoenix Herp Society. Remember, if you guys have any questions, anything like that, you can leave them in the comment section down below. I will answer them. If I don't know the answer personally, I'll shoot these guys an email and ask for you guys. It's been an amazing time here. Keep in mind, you can do donations and they will accept sponsors for different animals. And I encourage you guys, please, from the bottom of your heart, I know it's Christmas time. It's an awesome place. If you're in Phoenix or coming to Phoenix, make sure you stop here.
A good place to keep up on whatever's going on here, including our tours, is our website, phoenixherp.com. We also have a Facebook page, friend us on there. We post tons of updates on what new animals are coming in, how our breeding programs are going, when we might be running extra holiday tours. Okay. And another great resource is our Instagram page, Phoenix Herp. You can find us on there as well.
I'll make sure to link all of their links in the very top of the description so you guys have no trouble finding them. Joe, it's been a pleasure once again. Thank you so much. I hope to be back here next time around if, you know, I'm invited back, of course.
Definitely stop on by.
Awesome. Thanks, man.